to The Zone, episode 13. This week, we're playing something slightly different. Now, in the previous weeks, we've done some of the A-list game release titles, some of the top-notch games, some of the top-notch betas, and some of the really high-end stuff. This week, one of you guys suggested we play Forced. This is a game made by the guys over at BetaDwarf, and is more of an indie title than anything else. It's available on Steam for $11.99, and it's a game set around you, the player, playing as one of up to 4 slave gladiators. You are taken from your tribe. This is a tribe bred purely to be slave gladiators. You're put through a series of trials, and ultimately you're told you are fighting for your freedom. Now, as with many of these gladiator stories goes, technically you're never really going to be free. You're more likely expected to die. The game, as I said, is 1 to 4 player, so you can go all the way up to 4 player co-op, or you could play it solo. I found 2 friends and we played through it in 3 player co-op mode. Now, this isn't just something you can just drop in and out of. You do have to select how many players are going to be in that lobby when you start, so that it can scale it and help you along the way. One of the things I do really like about this is that when you go straight into the game, you don't choose a class and make a character. You have your gladiator, and then you can choose which type of weapon you use along the way, and you can change it, but there can only be one of each type in the group. So if you want to change, you have to swap it with a friend, or in our case, because there was a spare one, we were easily able to switch a couple of times backwards and forwards. Now, to start with, the trials are obviously a little bit simple, but they're just to get you a grasp on the controls, to get you a grasp on the way the puzzle system work. Later on, they introduce a really nice mechanic, and I like this. It's a... Those of you that know Dota and WoW and those kind of, well, the Warcraft universe, I'd call it a wisp. That's what it reminds me of. It's this spirit entity. It's your guide through the Gladiator Trials world. But you use this to complete some of the tasks in the level. Now, from some of the early odds, you have to destroy some statues. To do this, you have to empower your spirit and then call him to go from one to the other of your team, your squads, whatever you want to call it, and he will then obviously travel along that path between the two of you, and you have to guide him through the level using this to destroy some objectives. You can also use this to charge him up with a healing aura, so you pass him over a healing well, and then there's an AoE effect around him that heals you and your teammates, so providing you're all grouped up at that point, you can guide him over there. There's a series of other shrines that you can use with this spirit object that really adds a nice dimension, a nice bit of co-op to this gameplay, which otherwise the game would just be a 4-player hack and slash with a couple of button activators. This Wisp really requires some deep communication from your team. There's a couple of really nice things in the map, some designed around blocking your gladiator, but not the Wisp or your enemies. There's some that's designed around blocking your gladiator and the Wisp, but not your enemies. And there's some just standard straight up walls, which your Wisp, while it can pass through normally, if it's empowered with something, say an explosive or a healing, it will drop off when it tries to go through the wall. So you've got to really try and position yourself and move it accordingly. Also later on, there's a couple of points where you will attach the Wisp to a movable object, and then you use that to drag it around. So like your traditional games of, okay, this object has to sit on this button, we'll push it and we'll pull it with our teammates to activate that. You have to put the Wisp in there and then still control the Wisp as if you were just trying to call it between yourselves and your friends to activate pillars, but it's dragging this object with it. So you've got to line yourselves up, you've got to be in very specific positions to make sure it's going in the right direction. All the while fighting off waves of enemies, trying to keep yourselves alive. This game really has a lot of potential to become quite tough and challenging as you go further and further through the story mode. And to be completely honest, the story behind it's pretty good too. I mean, it's an indie game, it's not going to have the big name writers, it's not going to have your big movie scripts, your likes of Beyond Two Souls and similar. It's not that it had any good writing. But it's enough. It's enough to have you a little bit attached to your character. Your tribe is threatened as you get through the first challenge as well. So it's not just you looking after your gladiator. You've got this imaginary family, this imaginary tribe back home, and you're fighting to try and keep them alive as well. Now, as I said, it's available on Steam for $11.99, or you can buy a 4-pack for $29.99, so it's a big saving there. And of course, give it around to your friends to then play co-op. It's a great little time sink. It's got a nice little replay value with specific challenges added into the levels, specific time constraints added into some of the levels, and it's got a gem system. Now, the first thing we said as we walked into the very first staging ground, so to speak, is this is Crash Bandicoot. It's a very pretty game and it has a very similar art style to some of the original Crash Bandicoots, and the graphic settings made me laugh a lot. They are ugly but fast, low, medium, ultra beautiful, if I remember correctly. So it's not too straining. Running on beautiful does not take an amazing system, but it does look very good when you do so. Ultimately, for $11.99, if you have 3 friends to play with, or even if you don't, it's pretty good with just 1 or 2 people on there. This is well worth the money. I'm a big fan of Force, and I'm definitely going to keep playing it now that we've finished the review. And I'm sure I'll mention it a couple of times on Twitter or in later videos as to what my thoughts are towards the game as I continue playing. But it's a very promising game, and it's a great little indie buy. Now, of course, this is an Alienware Arena video, so don't forget, head over to eu.alienwarearena.com/thezone. Let me know if you've played Force. There's a couple of people on my friends list that have it, but I didn't realise did so until I bought it myself. So I'd like to think it's a bit bigger than I had originally anticipated. But it's a great little game, so if you don't have it, and if you're looking for friends to play it with, head over and find some on the Arena. Of course, there'll be a Force group. If there's not, make one, or just use the Arena, the Zone group itself to find yourself some friends to play this game with. Hopefully there'll be a lot of you going for it. And if you do like it, let us know at the AW Zone on Twitter, and let BetaDwarf know at BetaDwarf. Those are the developers. I'm sure they'll love to hear that people are enjoying their game. So that about wraps up my thoughts on Forced. Thank you for tuning in again, guys, and I'll see you in a week's time.